Welcome everyone to the second event of our spring 2022 speaker series, The Road Back to Chapel Hill. This spring, we're turning our focus to the 2022 Alumni Forum, which will take place here in Chapel Hill in October. And we're going to announce the specific dates a little bit later this month. And as anyone who has attended an Alumni Forum in the past will attest, one of the best things about the weekend is the fact that it's always held right here on the Carolina campus. So it gives us the opportunity to return to this magical place that we love so much. Our spring series invites all of us to make that return trip now, virtually, to hear from scholar leaders, faculty, and alumni about what's going on at Carolina right now and what's planned for the future. So for today's talk, we've invited three current scholars, Ray Palma, class of 23, Selina Shi, also class of 2023, and Brandon Torng, class of 2024, to talk with you about the establishment of the UNC Asian American Center. And as a special treat, we've invited all of the 2022 Morehead-Cain finalists to join us today. We're in the middle of our final selection experience, which is a week-long virtual version of final selection weekend. And the finalists are getting to know Morehead-Cain and Carolina. And we really welcome all of you finalists who are here with us today. There is one finalist who's having a birthday today. So we wanted you all to show some love to Chandler Beals from Elkin High School in the chat feed. Happy birthday, Chandler. Okay, for now, thank you, Ray, Selina, and Brandon for being our speakers today. And please tell us your story. I'm having trouble hearing. Is anyone having trouble hearing?
Oh, all right. Hi, everyone. I'm going to wait for Ray to share his screen because we've got a short presentation for you all today. Perfect. All right. Again, hey, everyone. It's so nice to see you all here today. Brandon, Ray, and I are incredibly excited to talk with you all about the UNC Asian American Center, and specifically the journey to get the center established on campus. But before we get started, let's just first do some introductions, and I'll go first. My name is Selina, and I'm a junior scholar from Michigan, around 20 minutes outside Detroit. I'm currently studying business and computer science, with potentially a history minor thrown in there as well, but we'll see how things end up shaking out. But I joined the Asian American Center campaign team in the fall of my freshman year because I had tried a lot of the quote unquote classic college experiences beforehand, like joining a sorority, joining a whole lot of really random clubs, but I never really found my place on campus. I never really found the place where I felt like I belonged. However, being a part of this campaign team has just been one of the most rewarding experiences because we've had the opportunity to be a part of a team that's literally built something from the ground up and will be here for the benefit of generations of UNC students to come. So I'll pass it off to Ray to introduce himself now.
Yeah, thank you, Selina. One thing she won't mention is that she is the leader of the student team currently, and she's been involved, really since the get-go. So she's been absolutely instrumental in the development. But hey, everyone, my name is Ray Palma. I'm currently a junior studying public policy and business with a Spanish minor. I'm originally from Durham, so I may or may not have grown up a Duke fan, which I just realized this video is being recorded. So hopefully you don't use that against me. But besides that, I've always really been interested in just like general civic engagement, government, but also really just getting to know people, really understanding the different perspectives and backgrounds that people come from, both myself as well as with others. And that's actually one of the reasons why I joined the Asian American Center campaign team back in the fall of my sophomore year, so pretty much fall 2020. I really wanted to be able to better understand, my half Asian identity and background, and with other people who were like me, had looked like me, had different, had very similar sort of upbringings and just like life experiences, but also be able to be a part of something that contributed to the well-being of the campus and the Carolina community. And so it's been an amazing experience so far, and I'm really excited to be able to share more with you today. But with that, I'd love to pass it back over to Brandon.
Hey everyone, my name is Brandon Torng. I'm currently a sophomore here at UNC. I'm studying business with minors in entrepreneurship and philosophy, politics, and economics. I'm originally from McLean, Virginia, which for those of you who know, it's about 15 minutes outside of DC. And going to high school there, excuse me, to be honest, I guess for lack of a better phrase, the high school that I went to just lacked diversity. So I think when I came to Carolina, I knew I really wanted to get involved with a lot of the Asian American organizations on campus, both to explore my own identity and also try to make a bit of an impact on campus. So joining the Asian American Center campaign team was just a really great opportunity for me, and it's been a really great experience so far. And moving forward, it's really truly an honor knowing that I'm working on something that is, much larger than myself and something that will last for years to come. And with that, I'll pass it back to Selina.
Great. So first, to start off this presentation, I'm going to answer the question, just what is the campaign team? The campaign team is a student-founded, student-run, and student-driven effort that was established in the summer of 2019 with the explicit goal of realizing the dream of an Asian American Center on UNC's campus. However, this 2019 effort was really not the first time that Asian American students at UNC have advocated for a center. In fact, students have been fighting for a center on campus since 1994. The need for the center was always there, but because of various reasons, whether that be a lack of funding, a lack of administrative support, lack of donor support, lack of student engagement, or just a general reluctance to take on a project that initially seems impossible, this desire for a permanent space on campus really never turned into anything more than that. Yet in those 25 years since 1994, not only was a center never established, but the need for a center has only grown. So for example, looking at the numbers, North Carolina's Asian American population grew by 85% in 10 years, which is the fastest rate among all Southern states and the third fastest in the entire country. At UNC specifically, Asian Americans make up 16% of the student population and 18% of undergraduate first years. So this means that we are now the largest ethnic minority on campus and really only increasing in size. However, 35% of those students still feel like they lack a sense of belonging. And moreover, there really was just no support or resources provided by the university. In fact, the only space dedicated to Asian Americans on campus before the establishment of the center was one shelf on the 7th floor of Davis Library. So these problems have always existed, but the journey to solve them has never been tested. So this group of students, which included 4 Morehead-Cain scholars, Sean Wynn, Sarah Hawley, Aditi Adhikari, and myself, and now includes 4 more, Ray, Brandon, Caitlin Nygren, and Shiv Bhargava, who unfortunately were not able to join us on the call today, but they decided to take the journey on, even though administration and members of UNC development and other students really thinking that this would be a wasted effort, tried to dissuade them all. But in the spirit of championing the journey, the campaign team took this idea on and did something with it. So to give a brief overview, to get a center established on campus, you basically need to accomplish 3 things. 1, you need to gain approval to plan by the university. 2, you need to draft an extensive policy document and see it approved by the Board of Trustees. And 3, you need to raise a multi-million-dollar endowment to support the center. So although this checklist is very clearly written out, the steps to accomplish each item were not clear or on the surface even really feasible. But to add on, this process has historically taken around it's taken a long time for other centers on campus, around 10 years. And for those of you familiar with university bureaucracy, I'm sure this number is just not a surprise. However, what makes this entire journey all the more amazing is that when all was said and done, this student campaign team accomplished these 3 items in 9 months. So thus, these students' passion and dedication are not only inspiring, but are truly the reasons that the Asian American Center is standing on campus today. So now I'll give the floor to Ray and Brandon, who are going to take us through that journey that got us to where we are now.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that, Selina. Just thinking about it broadly, the goals and objectives of the center when it was getting established were to, one, promote a public understanding of Asian American people, cultures, histories, and their, just relevance to the greater U.S. community. To 2, empower existing Asian American communities through supporting the UNC Chapel Hill Asian American student population and program university-wide. And then 3, providing resources and opportunities for those interested in Asian American related pursuits to engage with the greater regional, national, and global conversations. And so, with that, I mean, that took a lot of, development and work to get into place. But going over the history a little bit, so everything really started in April, May of 2019. And that started with a UNC alum, Eugene Lau, who had been president when he was in school back in the 90s of the Asian American Students Association, coming back to Carolina and saying, hey, we think it'd be great. He really wanted to give a donation to the Asian American Students Association. And the president at that time, Jun Yam, said, hey, I think that'd be great. And this was a substantial donation. He was wanting to give, some $150,000. And, she said, let's think bigger. What could we do here? What could we do to make sure that this donation and your initiative has greater and lasting impact? And so they put their brains together and, came up with the idea of a potential Asian American center. So Eugene Lau and then also Barb Lee, who was another alum who was, very influential, were able to work together and be champions of this effort. And that's around the time when Sean Wynn, class of 2021, got involved, was able to really put everything into motion. So over, the end of that semester, over the summer of 2019, they all worked together to talk about, what this could potentially look like, pretty much building relationships with potential high capacity donors. As Selina said, it takes a lot of fundraising to really establish and endow a center, an official university center. And so they worked really hard. It was a lot of outreach, conversations, planning, organization. And as Selina mentioned, it just takes a lot of understanding and effort when it comes to navigating the university sort of procedures and processes. And so there was a lot of planning going on there. And then towards the end of the summer, things really started to come together. In the fall of 2019, around August, the campaign team, which had now grown to about 6 to 8 students, began working with the University Development Office to identify and connect with high capacity alumni donors. There was the creation of an alumni steering committee, headed up by Barb, Lee, and Eugene Lau to help sort of navigate this process and, just be able to give greater capacity to the fundraising efforts. A provost committee on Asian American Center at Carolina was established and the first meeting was held. And then in September, the request for authorization to plan went through the Center's Institute's Review Committee and was reviewed and approved by both the chancellor and the provost, which was great. They pretty much gave us the blessing to start planning this or continue planning it. And so over the next, 2-3 months or so and throughout October, November, and December, the campaign team continued to put their heads together, prepare all the documents and everything, have the conversation they need to continue to fundraise. And they, at this point, hit $400,000 in donations, which was really big, towards that $5 million goal. And there were some alumni events that were hosted in Charlotte, as well as in the Chapel area that were great for engagement and building, support for this initiative. As you can see in the bottom right picture here, that was an event at Barb Lee's house. And there was a dumpling making event with Chancellor Guskowitz there and, a good 50 people. Which was incredible. And Chancellor Guskowitz throughout this whole process had been, has been extremely supportive. And so we thank him for that. But that moved into spring of 2020, where in January, after all that planning, the center was finally given the green light by the Board of Trustees to be authorization to establish, which was, as Selina mentioned, the fastest establishment process for any official university center in the history of UNC. So that was incredible. And at this point, we had hit $650,000 in donations, which was also incredible. You know, we were moving full steam ahead. We also had some other events like the Give UNC event, which is an annual university fundraising event. We were able to raise $71,000. And so everything is all in well. And obviously COVID hit, unfortunately, COVID hits around March and everything sort of comes to a halt. But, you know, in persevering through in the fall of 2020, the center hires its first director, you know, through a joint committee between some university personnel as well as some students. And this is Dr. Heidi Kim, who she's been a great director, and we really appreciate her contributions. We also held some alumni events. They were all virtual, obviously, because of COVID, but a West Coast event, a DC event, a North Carolina event for alums in those areas, and able to make some great connections and also raise some money. So everything is going well. Also began having programmatic events. You know, as an official university center, you know, there does have to be an educational focus to it. And so we had a few events such as like an affirmative action discussion event, an Asian Americans and the Vote event with guest speaker Judy Chu, who represents the 27th Congressional District in California. And then throughout the academic year in fall of 2021, going back actually, in spring of 2021, we continued to have different programmatic events such as the Anti-Asian/Asian American Violence Student-Led Open Forum, which we had great attendance at, you know, a discussion on the model minority myth, and then the biggest event, which I don't know if Shiv is on this call currently, he was able to moderate, but it was Cal Penn joined us for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month back in late April of 2021. And for a Q&A discussion, which was really, really crazy to have Cal Penn join us and be able to just ask him questions and get answers and everything like that. So that was great. And then looking ahead to fall of 2021, the center officially opened its doors at its location on campus. We were able to hire our first associate director, Dr. Krupal Amin, and then we continued to help provide the center with events, you know, getting students there, connecting with the community, and just trying to get as much engagement as possible. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Brandon.
Thank you so much, Ray. So picking up in the fall of 2021, and since then, last semester, we've been able to host multiple in-person events, which has been really amazing because last year we were really confined to the virtual space, which I know can be hard sometimes, especially for those discussion-based events. For the past few months now, we've hosted open forums for UNC students and faculty alike to just come together and have conversations about issues relevant to Asian Americans on both UNC's campus and in our surrounding communities. We were also lucky enough to host guest speaker Jenny Han last fall, whose name I'm sure some of you are familiar with. She's a UNC alum and author of now Netflix series as well, To All the Boys I've Ever Loved. And looking ahead, we'll continue hosting open forums this semester, as well as guest speakers. We'll also be hosting 3 consecutive events during Asian Pacific American Heritage Month to raise awareness for local businesses, and also ongoing art and cultural projects surrounding Asian American heritage that are happening right now on UNC's campus. And at the end of the day, none of this would have been possible without the hard work of students, both currently on the Asian American Center campaign team and those who have graduated as well, and the continuous support of the university, as well as the Morehead-Cain Foundation, of course, who have time and time again given us a platform to share our perspectives and experiences. Truly, the foundation has been so supportive of the center and the work that we have done along the way, and we really appreciate them for allowing us to speak to y'all today. And finally, to y'all attendees, thank you so much for coming and listening, and especially to all the finalists out there. We really hope to see you on campus next semester. And it really means a lot to me that y'all came out today to support us. And I'm sure I can speak on behalf of Ray and Selina as well, that they feel exactly the same way. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our amazing panel, and what a wonderful journey through the whole process and bringing us right up to today. And we would love to hear from anybody who has a question. So just put your hand up, as I said, and we'll start calling on you. Before I do that, though, I do want to say you heard the name Sean Wynn several times. He graduated his class of 2021. And Sean is actually on the call today. And I'd love to just, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Sean, but if you wouldn't mind just saying a word or two to the group, maybe even ask the first question if you'd like. But Sean was absolutely instrumental in this whole process. So Sean, we'd love to hear from you.
Definitely. Hey, Megan, and hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I think, only thing I'd share, right, I just graduated from this past May, love the Morehead-Cain, love UNC. So all the finalists on the call, definitely make the right decision and go to UNC. I'll say sort of two things. The first is that the Morehead-Cain Foundation was absolutely pivotal in getting this Asian American Center established, right? I remember I had numerous conversations with David Greer, the Director of Development, Chuck Lovelace, the former director of the foundation, and they were so helpful in opening up doors for around the university. And so really, message to the finalists, right? If you come to UNC through the Morehead-Cain and you have an idea, a bold, sort of courageous idea, you can really leverage the network at the Morehead-Cain to make those a reality. Second thing I'll say is that within the Morehead-Cain community, as you heard from Brandon, Ray, Selina, some of the most talented and wonderful people I've had the privilege of working with. So if you are starting a student venture, whether it's an Asian American Center or an entrepreneurship startup or other clubs or organizations, the people that you'll pull from most likely will be Morehead-Cain scholars because they're smart, right? The Morehead-Cain has done a good job vetting them. But fundamentally, they're just good people too. And so that's also one really great thing about the program is that, you have a group of buddies, right? That you can choose who to work with and how to build things and sort of scale them and make them big. All to say, I'm definitely so proud and impressed with the work that Brandon, Ray, and Selina have continued on after, I've graduated and Aditi and Sarah has graduated as well. Definitely just very impressed, but that's all for me. Definitely want to hear questions from the finalists, from other people on the call, but thanks for having me again.
Thanks so much, Sean. Appreciate you being here and thanks for your leadership in this whole process. We will start today with Flavia Nunez Lodero.
Yes, hello. First of all, Selina, Ray, Brandon, thank you for your presentation. It was very well done and highly summarized. I feel like you really took those 9 months and delivered them in a way that made us understand the impact really of the center. So thank you for that and congratulations on being able to have it established. My question is, for those, you took a process that usually takes 10 years and you had to raise multi-million dollars in funds and you had to draft a big policy document, I would imagine, for the trustees. How were you successfully able to divide tasks within your campaign team? And what were tips and tricks that worked the best for you in order to be the most efficient?
I'd be happy to start off. So Sean, who just spoke, was the campaign director during those 9 months. And one thing that he did so incredibly well was leveraging the skills of each person on the campaign team to the best of their ability. So what we did was we split up the campaign team into 3 sub-teams. So there was a development sub-team that solely focused on raising money. There was a communication sub-team that focused on all outward facing materials. They did our whole branding guide. They did our logo. Any emails that went out, went through them. They were just incredible with making sure that our messaging was all really smooth and cohesive. And finally, the 3rd sub-team was campus engagement. So their focus was making sure that we were speaking with community organizations and student organizations on campus so that the word was getting out there and that they knew what we were doing. And they were also incredible in helping to host events. I remember campus engagement held an open mic night at Epilogue, which if you guys ever make it, if you guys ever come to Chapel Hill, you have to go to Epilogue. It's this amazing Mexican coffee shop. But yeah, that was an incredible night, and a ton of people came out and learned about what we were doing and just had a great time. So I'd say splitting up your team into different subgroups and making sure that each subgroup has a clear focus, but also like really good cross communication is really key.
Yeah, thank you, Selena. And thank you for that question. I completely agree with what Selena said. I think the first thing, obviously, I think everyone knows communication is huge. Making sure that you're active in whatever group chats or channels that in which you're working. Just being as responsive as possible. That's a very obvious one. The other one I would say is, I think we all know the saying of it's amazing what can get accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit. And I think that's really important because in a large way this was Sean's sort of one of his initiatives, sort of his baby, but that never stopped him from just trying to get as many people involved as possible, because he knew that this was not something that can be achieved just by one person. You needed to have as large of a team of active people and engaged people who are really passionate about it as possible to achieve the goals. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was the fastest official university center ever established, because Sean recognized that, and he recruited Selena, he recruited me, he recruited Brandon, and a lot of other people as well, both within the Morehead community but also outside of it. And so I think it's really important just to remember that even when you are starting something, whether it's a nonprofit or a business or some sort of club, don't hesitate to get other people involved. Sometimes it's sort of your thing. You want it to be done your way, and you have this vision for it. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of times a greater purpose for what you want to do and why you want to do it, and just always remembering that and not hesitating to get other people involved, I think is really important.
Great, thank you to
Yes.
both of you for the answers, and to Flavia for a great question. Next up is Carolina Prieto.
Hi, well, thank you so much for sharing your stories in time this morning. It was really inspiring. And my question is, does the AACC do activities or events with other affinity or equity groups? And if so, which ones?
I can start off on this one. So one of the main goals of the Asian American Center as kind of a base for both students and other community members on UNC's campus is to connect these Asian American organizations on campus, because I know in the past there's been a lot of difficulties with just so many different ethnicities and cultures around Asia, connecting all of these groups. And I think one of the main goals of the center, now that it is open, is to connect these groups. So we actually have been having meetings for the past almost 2 semesters now, trying to connect these organizations, trying to collaborate with them. And one thing that the center is also trying to do is to connect with other centers on campus. So for those of you who are familiar with UNC, you'll know there's the Stone Center dedicated towards African American heritage. There's also the Latinx Center and a bunch of other cultural centers around campus that we're actively trying to connect with to kind of bring the community together.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Carolina, too. Chris, you're next.
Hello, thank you all so much for sharing the story, and congratulations on such an efficient implementation of the center. My question is, what kind of long-term impact do you want to have on the culture of North Carolina through the center? And then also, how can non-Asian Americans such as myself support the work of the center throughout our time at North Carolina?
I can start off. Thanks so much for your question, Chris. In my mind, my goal for what I want the future of the center to be is I want future students to come to UNC, and then when someone tells them, actually, 10, 20, 30 years ago, there was never an Asian American Center, they act in surprise and like, oh my gosh, really? That's crazy. I can't imagine the university without a center. So that's really my personal end goal. For non-Asian American students or students who don't identify Asian American, I'd say your support is still so key. Coming to events and making sure that you show support for your Asian American classmates and your Asian American friends is so important, because your voice in those conversations is still very valuable and really needed. So just making sure that you guys are still there at events and coming to the center and just starting those conversations and being open to those conversations is really important.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. To build off of that, I think it's really important that just having somewhere, a space, people where Asian Americans can come, from all different backgrounds, whether you're Southeast Asian, East Asian, South Asian, whatever you might be, to come and be able to relate to one another, talk with one another, engage with one another, but also for people, even if you're not Asian, place where they can come learn. When we have discussion events or panel events, we want everyone to come, not just, we're not just separating ourselves off from the rest of the university by any means. We want to share stories, hear from other people. And so it's a great space for that. I'm really excited for the fact that, Asian Americans for years to come in the future, students will be able to, both students and alumni will be able to come and have that space where they can be with others and learn about one another, but also more about themselves. One thing that, for me at least, in coming to Carolina, one of the big reasons I came to Carolina, besides obviously the scholarship, was the fact that you can make a big university small, but you can't make a small university big. And so this is a great place where the Asian American Center to me is the epitome of being able to be at Chapel Hill, go to big basketball and football games, interact with people from all around the world, but also, be with people who are, maybe look like you, have had similar experiences with you. Maybe they don't, you get to learn about them. But to me, that's just an incredible experience. And I'm really excited that that's going to be able to have, lasting impact for students and alumni for years to come.
Thanks, Chris, for the question. Shri, you're next, but I'm going to jump into the chat and read a question first. So if you'll hold just a moment, that'd be great. Caroline Chen has asked, she said, thank you so much for your talk. How difficult is continuing to advocate for the needs of cultural groups like the AAC after being founded, especially at a predominantly white institution? Are needs like funding and spaces sufficiently respected?
Thank you for that question. It's a really good question, something that we definitely think about a lot on the team. As Selina had mentioned earlier, we have a team specifically dedicated towards development. And in terms of the kind of the original opening of the center, before we were university sponsored, because now we receive funding from the university as a university sponsored center. Before that, and still to this day, a lot of our funding comes from donors. And as you saw in our presentation, there's kind of always been a need, a want for the center, people who are interested in starting something like this at UNC. And furthermore, the population is there, right? 18% of the undergraduate population almost now being Asian American. So we always had the people, we always had the need and the want. And at that point, it was really just reaching out to alums, prospective donors. And to be honest, I know Ray and Selina can also speak on this because we all worked on development in the past together. But it's not easy, reaching out to people who, maybe not as connected to UNC anymore, who maybe they are, but, not everyone is able to, just have money and donate. But I think through the help of a few key donors, especially Eugene Lau, which y'all heard about a while ago, we were really able to push the center forward. And then, as I mentioned before, now that we have university support and their support along the way in establishing the center, that's kind of how we receive our funding.
Thanks so much. And thanks for the question, Caroline. Shri, thanks for your patience. You're up next.
Hi, Selina, Ray, Brandon. I just wanted to say thank you so much for such an inspiring talk, especially as a person of color. I really appreciate the efforts that you guys have made at UNC Chapel Hill. And my question is, out of all your predecessors who attempted to build this safe space for Asian Americans, Why do you think that primarily a Morehead-Cain team was the only one able to do so, especially on such an efficient timeline? I know you mentioned the foundation, but are there any other qualities or specific experiences that you believe Morehead-Cain scholars have that maybe primed you for being successful on this journey?
That's a really good question. One thing that I'll say is, I'm not sure if Sean is still in this call. I can't exactly speak for him, but as a community, and those of you who come to Carolina, you will know, the Morehead will really bring you all together. There's so many opportunities to get to meet the people in your class, to get to know them, to work on projects together, and to just have these kinds of conversations with them, whether it's about culture, race, ethnicity. And I think that, I'm sure, played a really big role in the success of the center, because these students, these Morehead scholars who were already so close, who had likely had these discussions for a while leading up to the actual effort to establish the center, they were able to work together as a team really well. They were able to put action plan in, and at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to a passion. I'm sure all of you finalists have done amazing things in high school, have been really passionate about the work that you do. And that really just translates into college. And I think combining that passion with the tight-knit community that we are really primed them for success.
I also want to add that, of course, the team itself and everybody on it was so instrumental in making this happen. But I also want to give credit just to the environment and the time. I just think by 2019, like the center was just so overdue. And those 25 years of buildup of trying and trying again, but never really succeeding, just created this environment of, we need to do this, like this needs to happen. And so that urgency was instrumental in helping us get the center approved at record speed. And furthermore, all those individuals that were part of those efforts in the 90s and in the early 2000s, they're all now much older and still baffled that a center doesn't exist yet. So they were all incredibly willing to help out, either through donations or through their time and just general support.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add on there that I agree completely with what Selina and Brandon said. When it comes to just the speed of the initiative, obviously there's just growing awareness and care for different identities and creating those different identity spaces and stuff. But also, I think it's really important to recognize that it's really important to have influential allies and people who are really on your side and helping you, as opposed to just being neutral or being against you. And that seems pretty intuitive, but it really doesn't matter. Being able to identify who those people are, reach out to them, and make your case and get them onto your side. And so, for one thing, for us, I think a specific individual was Chancellor Guskowitz. He's been incredible throughout the entire process, and I think one of the reasons there is that he does have an adopted Vietnamese daughter, and so this was something that was very near and dear to his heart. But even besides, even if he didn't have an adopted Vietnamese daughter, I think this was something that he would have absolutely supported. He's been, in my opinion, a terrific chancellor so far, very supportive of students in general. But I think it just goes to show that it's really important, as I mentioned, to be able to identify who the decision makers and power brokers are when it comes to any space you're in, and being able to reach out to those people and just navigate those relationships and receive that support.
Got it. Thank you all so much.
Thanks for your great question as well. Sean, did you want to chime in at all with a little final thought on that, or?
No, nothing for me. Thank you, though.
All right. Oh, there you go again. Not taking any credit and being kind and humble. We love you. So Emily, you are next. I wanted to jump in though and see if, again, putting someone else on the spot, James Barnes in the class of 77 had made a comment in the chat, and I was hoping he would expound on it just a bit. I think you've inspired him tremendously with what you've done. James, are you able to talk?
Sure. Yeah, I can chat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, very good inspiration. And having spent a little bit of time in the innovation business, one of the best questions to ask is what's impossible? And, this reminded me of the little quote that I mentioned in the chat from the movie Amazing Grace, where the Prime Minister of England, I think he was age 24, William Pitt, was talking to William Wilberforce about the idea of abolishing slavery, which of course at the time would seem impossible and ridiculous. And he said to him, we're too young to know what's impossible. So this is a kind of carpe diem comment to people as they enter UNC, that go for it. Just go for it. In business, I mean, I'm 67 or something like that now. And as I reflect, when people would join our companies that I work for, the newcomers to the company always had the best ideas. So my encouragement to people thinking of joining UNC and freshmen, and whenever you're new, you're more valuable than you think you are. So I would just encourage everybody to go for it.
Thanks so much, James, for jumping on there. Emily, thanks for your patience. You're next. I'm having trouble hearing Emily. Is anyone having? Are you able to? It looks like you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Tell you what, try unmuting one more time. Let's see if it works. And if it doesn't, then we'll. Oh, can't hear you. Why don't you play with your audio, and we'll come back to you if we can in just a sec. Chandler Dees is next. Sorry about that, Emily.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. It was incredibly informative and inspiring. As many of you are Morehead-Cain scholars and you're incredibly motivated, how did you motivate yourself past the fear of failure and kind of isolation as you developed this over a very quick 9 months?
I'll defer to our fearless leader, Selina, to go first.
Sure. Thanks for your question, Chandler. I think it's a really important question. I would actually just refer to the title of our presentation and one of the tenets of the Morehead-Cain philosophy, championing the journey. I think focusing on the small steps and focusing on the actual path to get there instead of always of course you need to keep the end goal in mind, but making sure that you take those small baby steps each time, and that those small baby steps, when aggregated, are going to get an incredible result. But of course it's easy to say that, but there were many situations where things didn't go so well, and the morale was not great, and we didn't think it was going to be possible. But I think in those situations, having a bigger team is so helpful, because when you're feeling down, other people can help bring you back up and help find solutions to those problems and make sure that we all get back on track. So really just credit to everybody else on this team for making this happen.
Yeah, to build off that, no, I think, a lot of people, when it comes, I think a lot of us obviously here are, very smart, typically high achieving people. And, when it comes to people who are very ambitious, high achieving, hardworking, that fear of failure can definitely sometimes, or oftentimes more than not, be a hindrance. And I think one thing that's important to remember is that, right now in college, especially with the scholarship, is the time to be able to fail, is the time to, as Mr. Barnes say, go out and, just go for it. And, because right now, is the time to explore what interests you have, do things that you're passionate about, and just really go for it. Because in college, you are able to, as I mentioned, just go for it, be able to take chances, learn new things, and fail, and learn more about yourself, and you're going to be better for it in the future. Whereas when you have a job, when you're older, failure is not a good thing. If you fail at your job, you're gonna get fired. Whereas right now you can fail and you can learn from that. You can even in an interview or looking forward, you can spin that in a good light. You know, I failed in this way, but I learned from that and I'm better for it. So now is the time to just be able to just go for it and, you know, fail forward.
Awesome, great question. And Emily Adcock was able to type her question in, and so I'll read it to the crew. She said, so clearly y'all have done a wonderful job creating this center. However, looking back, is there anything you think you should have approached differently in this process and why?
I guess, sorry, I think I screamed too much at the game on Saturday, so my voice is like a little bit gone. Thanks so much, Emily, for your question. It's a really, really good question. I'd say that, of course, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that looking back, we could have done better. And improvement is always there. But one big thing that I think we could have done much better is actually thinking about what happens after you achieve your goal. What happens after you reach the top of the mountain? So after we managed to get the center approved and to physically see the center open, I think the student team struggled a lot with finding what our place was. Again, the campaign team really struggled to see, well, we've accomplished our goal, but now what? So I'd say it's really taught me that in the future, when you have a big goal, it's equally as important to think about what happens after that goal and to plan for that as it is to plan for how you get to that goal.
Awesome, thanks so much. Next is Finn Sansom.
Hi there, thank you so much. That was fascinating and brilliant what you've all managed to achieve in such a small space of time. I was just wondering, you mentioned at the start of the talk, looking for a sense of belonging, and a lot of us may feel like that as Morehead-Cain finalists. So I was just wondering if you had any advice for us, you know, coming into UNC and how you sort of dealt with it as well. Thank you. One piece of advice that I give, and I know I'm just going to quote Ray from earlier, but it's really trying to make a small community out of a big community, you know. So when you get to campus, really just try and meet as many people as you can, join organizations that you're interested, and just don't be afraid to talk to people, talk to teachers, talk to other people around campus, because I think one of the things that's hard to see, but easy to reflect upon when you're looking at it in the past, is that everyone else is in that same situation. I think Selina and I are both out-of-state students. I'm sure we can speak on it a little bit more than Ray maybe, but like I literally came to Carolina and knew like no one. But it's really finding those communities such as the Asian American Center, or clubs and organizations that you're bound to join. Those are the small communities that you'll really find and really feel like you belong in.
Thanks for that, Ben. There's also, we do have affinity groups within Morehead-Cain as well. There is an Asian Scholar and Alumni group, and there are other groups. There are also some regional geographic groups, and so folks who come from a certain area can get together and find friends that way as well. So other ways to do that. Kayla Engler is next.
Hi, thank you. So can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, awesome. So first of all, I was very excited to see this talk on my finalist schedule. As an Asian American, your mission inspires me and resonates with me a lot, and I really appreciate the work you've done on UNC's campus. So to get to my question, so as an Asian American adoptee, I was curious about how adoptees have been involved in your program, and if they haven't yet, if that's part of your future plans, because I'm a strong believer that though Asian Americans definitely do have a unique identity development growing up in America, I think that adoptees do as well. And I was just curious about how that's been a part of your program.
Thank you so much, Kayla, for sharing that with us all. That's it's incredibly nice to hear from you. We do, the student team, one of our main focuses is doing these open forums, which is a space where we hold those discussions that you never really hear about or have the opportunity to talk about. So for example, we did an open forum on Asian American women's safety on UNC's campus, and then another one about Asian American representation in politics. So even though we haven't done one on Asian American adoptee experiences, I'd love to have that be a topic for a future open forum, because I think you're totally right. Like, not all Asian American experiences across the diaspora are so varied and so different. So creating spaces for each one of them is really, really important.
Great, thank you, Kayla. Avery, you're next.
Hi, thank you. I loved how I'm just so impressed with how fast you guys were able to do all of this, like 9 months. I'm still like in shock over that. But so you kind of touched on the timeline of building this initiative and the process, and it was actually over your guys' summers. And I know some of you are kind of in different places. So I was wondering how this initiative affected the summers you had through Morehead and how you were able to stay on your own personal paths while working as a group.
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I think well, for the initial, you know, a lot of the work that had to be done at the very get-go, we were that was our graduating year, and so we were not part of the campaign team yet. If Sean's on the call, he might be able to talk a little bit more about how that looked for him. But for the other summers that we've have been a part of, so summer of 2020 and then summer of 2021, you know, I think it's something where a lot of work is done like during the semesters, and then we definitely do have just periodic calls with alums and potential donors and stuff like that, and stay in touch with one another over the summer. But you know, again, a lot of the work is done was done over the semesters, and just keeping in touch with one another and just making sure that, you know, when you get back to campus that you can hit the ground running with whatever programmatic events you have, donor events you have and stuff like that, was really big. But you know, I really do encourage people to when they are going on their summer experiences, whether it's your, you know, civic collab summer or your outdoor leadership summer, or whatever, your global perspective summer, whichever one it might be, to really be able to, you know, focus on that, and you know, definitely keep in touch with other people as well as initiatives that, you know, you're working on when you're on campus, but not to do so in a way that detracts from those summer experiences, because they are so exciting and so, you know, honestly life-changing in so many ways.
I can tell kind of a fun.
Brandon, go ahead.
All right, I was just gonna say, kind of a funny story. Selina and I work a lot together on the Asian American Center campaign team right now. And so when we were planning for the upcoming year this past summer, we were both away on our Morehead summers. I was actually working for a nonprofit in Jacksonville, Florida, and Selina was in Tbilisi, Georgia. So that was kind of interesting managing that time difference. I think it was like 8 hours. So we'd like hop on calls at like really weird times. But definitely, I would just echo what Ray said. The summers that the foundation provide are like amazing. And in terms of like the center, there's some planning that we've had to do over the summer, but definitely like focus on the opportunities that you'll have through the foundation over the summers.
Great, thank you all. We are running very close to time. I would love to, if Maria and Lei could ask their questions. I think that would be, I know it's good. We may go over just a shred. We understand if people need to jump off and go to class, but I think that's all we'll have time for. So Maria, why don't you jump in and we'll all talk fast. Thanks.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say a huge congratulations on this amazing accomplishment and this amazing feat. You truly are being trailblazers on the UNC campus, and I know that I've definitely benefited from advocacy of past students at my school. So I'm really excited to see that this is happening at UNC. So obviously when there are issues or when there are discussions related to certain like diasporas or racial experiences, those can be emotionally charged conversations. So I was wondering if you could speak a little to how you deal with burnout, if that may occur, and some of the resources you have available.
That's such a good question. I think burnout is something that's definitely real. And of course it's real, but something that a lot of like college students, especially coming straight out of high school, very excited college students don't realize in their first couple of years. But once you just, everybody reaches that point. I think it's important to try to minimize burnout is to carefully place your events and make sure that you don't do a bunch of things at 80% effort or 60% effort. You do a few things at 90, 95%, 100% effort. So making sure that even though it might be hard, during our brainstorming sessions, we have a ton of ideas, but in the end, we only pick 1 or 2 of those ideas to actually implement, so that the community doesn't get, the UNC community doesn't get too tired, we don't get too tired, and that we just maintain a level of quality in terms of our events and our personal lives.
Great advice, Selina. And Lay, we're going to have you wrap us up today with your question.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey behind establishing the center. I thought that was such an incredible story. So obviously within the Asian American community, there are so many groups with different identities, cultural backgrounds, histories. So there's no one size fits all approach to empowering each. So as a center, how do you make sure that you are inclusive of and address the needs of various communities on campus?
Thank you for your question. It's a really good question. And thinking back to what the center, one of their main missions is to really try and bring different communities together on campus. And as I had mentioned earlier, we're really kind of still in the process, actually, of really trying to reach out to all the different Asian American organizations on campus and trying to host joint events with them. Trying to bring those cultures together, because I completely agree that it is really difficult to navigate that. You definitely don't want to be focusing on certain parts of Asian American culture more than others, because naturally then it wouldn't be an Asian American center. It'd be focused on one specific ethnicity or race. So I think that is something that we're still navigating, and something that we definitely have in mind moving forwards.
Thanks for that, Brandon. What a great wrap up. And sorry we couldn't get to all the questions today, but remember, you can message each of these scholars on the Socio platform if you'd like to stay in touch and ask some more. And thank you so much, scholars, for giving our community the chance to come together and hear about the efforts to bring the Asian American Center to life. It was awesome. And we hope everybody will join us next week when we have our discussion guided by 3 scholars who are trying to facilitate a culture of communication and collaboration rather than one of comparison and competition in the university environment. Their program is called Courage Over Comfort, and we hope you'll all join us. Sarah will drop the link to that event in the chat, and you can all RSVP there. And thank you all so much. It's so great to see all of you, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.